Good evening and welcome to the regular meeting of the Wooster City Council held by Zoom video conferencing and YouTube this Monday, July 6, 2020. It's after 7:30 p.m. The next regular be the end of the regular meeting until then, because there's a 6-week hiatus that's built into the council schedule. Mr. Paulo, as clerk of council, would you please call the roll?
Mr. Ansel,
Here.
Mr. Bostancic,
Here.
Mr. Cavan,
Here.
Mr. Myers,
Here.
Mr. Sanders,
Here.
Mr. Silvestri,
Here.
and Ms. Warden.
Here.
Unmute your mic, Ms. Warden.
I heard her.
Yeah, I was.
Oh, okay. I didn't hear her. Sorry. We do have a quorum. The agenda will remain as presented, and at this time, I would ask you to stand and join the members of City Council in reciting the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To the flag
of the United
of
States,
the United States of America,
and to the republic
and to the republic for which it
which
stands,
it stands,
one
one
nation,
nation,
under God,
under God,
indivisible,
indivisible,
liberty, and
liberty, and justice for all.
with liberty and justice for all. Thank you all.
President Bytendike, this is
Yes.
Myers. I've had a question on my phone as to how they get to the live YouTube meeting. Could Mr. Scavelli share how that works or where the link is?
I
so,
I did not hear that, Mr. Scavelli.
I can answer.
okay, go ahead.
If they go to worceroh.com on the home page, under events, there's a live stream button, and all they have to do is click on that, and it should take them right to the YouTube page that they're looking for.
Thank you very much.
Definitely. There we go.
It's also running on Facebook right now.
Okay. All right. I can hear you now. I'm looking for a motion to approve the minutes of June 15th, 2020.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Silvestri to approve the June 15 minutes. Is there a second?
I second.
Second by Ms. Warden. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, please say nay. The minutes of June 15th, 2020 are approved. Communications from the mayor and administration, item 3 under the agenda. Welcome, Mayor.
Thank you, President Bytendike, and nice to see all council members and people from the public who are visible on our screen tonight. So, I'll try to keep my remarks short this evening just because I know we have a very long agenda. But I want to start out by recognizing one of our favorite sons here in the city of Worcester, or favorite organizations, the Worcester Community Hospital. We as a group have been named as a 6th-time winner of the the IBM Watson Health Top 100 Hospitals in our nation. They evaluated over 3,100 hospitals and picked the top 100 on clinical outcomes, efficiency, patient experience, and financial health. So congratulations to our Worcester Community Hospital team. They've done yeoman's work for all of us here in the city through this COVID crisis, and they do it every day, as noted by the 6th-time winning the top 100 hospitals. So that's good stuff. That was in our newspaper on Sunday, if you missed that ad. We are still experiencing low COVID numbers in our community, which is a great thing to be able to report to you. It's much better than what you're seeing in other areas of the state and country. So we hope to continue on that trend of a stable or a downward spiral as far as the numbers showing up. We're saddened in the administration and in the city by the passing of Brett Deffenbaugh on Thursday, July 2nd. Brett was a good friend of our city. He helped sell the need for our 2013 tax levy, which has kept us moving forward. We wouldn't be doing all of the infrastructure improvements in our city without that tax levy having passed in 2013. He volunteered to be a court-appointed receiver for the Larwell Trailer Park property, and that helped get that land cleaned up for redevelopment, and we do have a redevelopment partner in play for that. He also hosted an annual 5-0 cookout at Bowman Beverage for our police division and our fire division and the community, and that was a well attended event for that neighborhood and part of the city. So our condolences to his wife Deb and to the members of Brett's family. I received a letter from, and all council members received a letter from Andy Van Dusen concerning racial justice. This was received after the council packet cutoff, and there isn't any legislative action being requested. So I do want to touch on a few points this evening, and then I've asked Matt Fisher, our police chief, to talk about the protocol our Worcester Police Division follows for hiring, training, accountability, use of force protocol, and other topics unique to our Worcester Division. But I'll start out talking about homelessness. We help fund a lot of good things for our homeless population or our vagrant population in Worcester. We, as a group, said that we would dedicate $100,000 to the Living Room Project with the Salvation Army here for the next 2 years, a total of $100,000. We've annually funded the Vice Starts and Free Clinic. This year, it's an amount of $50,000 for a 2-year time period, to help low-income families receive medical and dental care. We have a CHIP program to help fix houses of approximately $350,000 for a 2-year program. So we do an awful lot in our community already to help homeless populations. Transportation, we spent approximately $500,000 last year to provide reliable and affordable transportation to people of Worcester. We work with Community Action, who helps make that whole transportation piece go for the city of Worcester. We work with community partners on substance abuse and mental health physical needs, such as 180, the Salvation Army, and the Housing Coalition. So we do all of these things already on a daily basis and have for many, many years. With that, though, I want to turn it over to Matt Fisher to highlight our police division, because he can tell the story the best, because he lives and breathes it every day. So Matt, can you help us out?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I know that Council, you all have a long agenda, so I'm going to try to go through this very quickly. As most of you already know, Scott and I are always willing and happy to talk if you have further questions or you want to dive down into something deeper. But I'll start with the Ohio Community Collaborative. That's a program that we've been involved with since its inception in 2016. We received our recertification for that on November 20th of 2019. It sets standards in the following areas: employee misconduct, bias-free policing, body-worn cameras, use of force, use of deadly force, agency employee recruitment and hiring, and community engagement. A standard basically for those items includes policy and procedure, knowledge and awareness, proficiency, and then compliance through agency activity and accountability. And they actually come to the department and audit us to see that we're doing those things. In addition to that, we subscribe to the Lexipol policy manual system that provides fully developed state-specific policies and what's called a daily training bulletin. So every officer, every single day, gets a daily training bulletin. It's a scenario-based question based on those policies. So there's continuous and ongoing training on policies. As many of you on council know, body-worn cameras, we have those, as well as in-car cameras. Our body-worn cameras we've had since 2015. From a recruiting standpoint, last year we used billboards, radio ads. We went to Cincinnati, Toledo, and Akron to try to recruit. And our HR director, Jeanette Wagner, also puts our police officer job postings up on a website called the National Minority Update, which has been committed to bringing minority, veteran, women, and disabled applicants into the workforce. From a training perspective, training is something that we value very much at our agency. And for 2019, we started a yearly in-service when I became chief for training. Last year, our in-service training included use of force training, criminal legal update, crisis intervention techniques, which is very centered on de-escalation. In addition to that, last year for our agency, we had about 3,600 hours of training total. And this year, because of COVID and not being able to send officers to school and do some of those things, we subscribed to something called Virtual Academy, which allows for online training. So far, we've completed our bloodborne pathogen training that's required, and we'll be pushing out it's a 2-hour block of implicit bias training for all the officers this year. From a hiring standpoint, our Detective Bureau does an extremely thorough background on individuals. I can tell you we have had people apply at our agency that maybe resigned or something from someplace else. Our detectives have always been able to vet that out and get down to the root of, hey, why this, why that? In addition to that, we use we use a psychological service called Pradco. Pradco sent an email out to, I think, all the agencies that utilize it here recently, and said that they've always looked for indicators of racial bias. They also have multiple measures of objectivity and impulsivity built into their screening. And they use an interview process that gets at people's interactions with citizens and if they treat people fairly and in an unbiased fashion. Their pre-hire psychological goes beyond standard clinical abnormalities. And part of what they're focusing on now is the 4 pillars of procedural justice, which is being fair in process, transparent in action, opportunity for voice, and impartial in decision-making. They're also very aware, and they're screening heavily for severity of implicit bias and propensity for using excessive force. And right now they're doing research to construct a duty to intervene category that they can start to measure. As far as use of force goes for our agency, we've been tracking that for a number of years. I can tell you the 3-year average for our agency is about 43 uses of force per year out of over 20,000 calls for service. And the vast majority of those are just grounding someone who's maybe resisting, who doesn't want to be handcuffed. We do de-escalation training. Probably 75% of our department members have had crisis intervention training, which is heavily focused on de-escalation. And in fact, in 2019, both Jerome Fatzinger and Josh Miller, who are part of the Wayne Holmes Coalition for Crisis Intervention, they actually won the state award for that. We also track citizen complaints. I can tell you in 2020 so far, we've had 1 complaint and it was unfounded. In 2019, we had 1 complaint that was unfounded. And in 2008, we had 4 complaints, 3 were unfounded and 1 the officer was exonerated. So we track all those and investigate them fully. We also do contact outside agencies to come in and investigate. The Bubba Schmidt incident where he was firing rounds at our officers and we returned fire, even though no one was struck by our officers. We asked BCI to come in and investigate that to make sure everything was above board. No-knock search warrants have been in the news here as of late. I can tell you that we have not done a no-knock search warrant since 2011, and nor do we intend to. The national model for those has changed, and we subscribe to that, and that is that basically you don't use a no-knock warrant to go in and get dope. It's not worth it. Lives aren't worth it. So we don't do that. Lastly, Guardian tracking is a system we use to both track good and bad behavior of officers. It allows for transparency with them, and it provides an early warning system that, possible intervention may be needed. Lastly, I can tell you that I am personally committed to the improvement of policing in the state of Ohio. I've reached out to the current president of the Ohio Association of Chiefs of Police, Will Balling, had a phone conversation with him and told him that I am more than happy and willing to be a part of any ongoing and future conversation regarding police reforms in Ohio, and would love to have a seat at the table if they have a need for me somewhere. So again, I whipped through that really quick. I know you guys have a really long agenda. As always, if you have questions, you want to dive into it a little deeper, you know where to find me. Thank you. Mayor, back to you.
Thank you, Matt. And I'll just finish up by saying we didn't know how timely this was going to be, but we've been publishing a little paper that comes in the city newspaper. It's a city newsletter. We gave it to council on April 17th and published it on April 22nd. And it's our spring 2020 edition. And in it, it talks, one of the whole pages is devoted to our police department, policing division, and talked about all of those things that Matt mentioned in his. So we do try to be really proactive in helping people understand the complexity of running a police division in your city. So with that, I'll finish up with all of the city meetings are open meetings we go through each year. The budget being discussed this evening is a preliminary tax budget required by the county before July 15th. Our comprehensive city budget will start its review in November. We usually hold 3 council meetings and up to 3 finance committee meetings on all of these budgets, and all are open to the public. Anyone is welcome and encouraged to attend. So with that, just a thank you to our charter review members. I know that's on 3rd reading tonight. That group worked very diligently to present a good charter update to City Council, and then hopefully our voting public in November. So with that, we're here to help with any question on tonight's agenda items, and turn it back over to you, President Biden.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I hope you can hear me. I've been having all kinds of technical difficulties this evening. It teaches me to update my tablet today, so I don't know what's happening here. Anyways, we have no petitions before council this evening. However, John Scavelli, our law director and gatekeeper, I turn to you because you know who wants to speak from the public on the items that are on this evening's agenda.
John, you're muted.
John, you're muted.
Okay. So I do want to say thank you, President Biden. I am going to go through those statements right now as we come in. I would request you give us like a 2-minute window after, or maybe a minute window after we're done with the last one, because there is a slight delay on the live YouTube for any statements that may come in during this time. I'm going to go back to the ones that have been coming in so far. I have informed everyone in the chat that we are not talking about things that are not on the agenda, but things that are on the agenda, I will bring it to council. So let's see. We have Johanna Harper, and she says that my concern is the proposed downtown curfew will disproportionately impact people with low income and will widen the gap in class and income here in Wayne County. That idea was seconded by Marlon Duval. Let me see what else we have. We have, again, Ms. Harper saying, will council and finance be open to engaging the community more in specific allocation of funds should the budget be approved during this meeting? Let's see. Ms. Pacheco says, imposing a curfew fails to address any of the underlying issues of people in need and those without a house in our community. What is Wooster and City Council actually going to do to solve this? Let's see. Mr. Duval says, yes, a curfew doesn't offer a solution to people in need without a house in our community. Let's see. Regarding the curfew, how does this really help businesses? They are not open during curfew hour. And I think I have covered everything that was commented on that has to do with tonight's agenda. I'll see if anything else comes in. Oh, so Ms. Weber says that the ACLU has argued that curfews criminalize normal and otherwise lawful behavior. Why is the city considering criminalizing more actions at a time when over-policing is seen as a problem already? And then Erica Ewing now says, I am concerned about the tax abatement. How does the council compare and decide the trade-off between the TIF developments, benefits to the city, and loss of revenue for Worcester schools in form of taxes? And then we have some people supporting some of the statements already made. So those are all the comments at this time, President Biden.
Okay, hopefully you can hear me. I notice my camera keeps blanking in or and out. So you might, this might be a faceless rest of the meeting, depending on what happens. We did have a joint committee with, or it was labeled as a joint committee meeting today. Mr. Ansel and Mr. Sanders, chairs of the respective committees, laws and ordinance and finance. One of you want to weigh in terms, or both of you, with regard to a review?
I'd be happy to start, Mr. President. We had a very insightful and productive work session this evening for approximately 50 minutes. The sole topic for review and discussion was the tax increment financing proposal currently on tonight's agenda for third reading. We looked at the current proposal as outlined in Ordinance 2020-21. We looked at reduction options and the impact of those reductions should we decide to proceed along those lines. And the lowest TIF discussed was a 35% grant, which had a 11-year payback, and it would hold the schools harmless for the proposed. It was significantly reduced from the developer's original request. The approximate amount discussed was about $415,000. It would allow the developer to pursue non-prevailing wage subcontractors to further reduce infrastructure build costs. And the general consensus was from the joint committee was to proceed with the current proposal, which is a $1 million proposal for the infrastructure improvements required for that subdivision. And it has some pretty significant consequences on the school and potential payback to the city in a timely fashion. For reference, it should be noted that there are some very aggressive TIFs that have been undertaken. Specifically, the Springfield TIF was reviewed. It's very aggressive. It has some different dynamics than we have in Worcester, but the consensus from the participating committee members was that we would leave the current proposal and let it be voted on this evening. There was significant comments regarding the position of council representatives that TIFs are not a viable tool unless it's in a blighted area and it provides more affordable housing than the current proposal. So this evening's vote will be very important. It was mutually agreed upon by all council participants as well as the joint committee representatives that the TIF is a viable tool with certain parameters within the checklist. However, each TIF proposal, this one included, will be considered and reviewed on its own merit, and we will vote accordingly on council. And that will happen this evening, and we can decide what the next step is going to be regarding the TIF concept and this specific initiative. With that, Mr. Sanders, I'll let you provide any additional input as the chair of the Laws and Ordinance Committee, because it's your piece of legislation this evening.
Well, thank you, Mr. Ansel. There's really not much to add other than in trying to determine if there was some type of threshold that we potentially would have in the future utilizing any type of TIF. There didn't seem to be any consensus amongst council members, as Mr. Ansel stated. The only consensus we had is everyone is willing to do this on a case-by-case basis in the future. And again, this was exceptionally complicated in terms of how this all potentially could or could not have occurred. And so with that, we, like I say, I appreciate everyone's input, everyone's involvement in this, and we will read this legislation here in a little bit, and we'll proceed from there.
All right, thank you, gentlemen, for your summation. We have no public hearings. That will bring us to item 6 on the agenda, unfinished business. First piece of legislation is resolution number 2020-25. That is the annual tax budget. If you would, Mr. Paulo, please read the title.
Resolution number 2020-25. A resolution providing for the annual tax budget for fiscal year beginning January 1st, 2021.
Mr. Ansel, the floor is yours. Unmute, please.
This is the third reading for this resolution, of which is a process defined by the Ohio Revised Code. And we had a public hearing as required on Monday, June 15th to review. Again, this is a very high level budgetary projection for revenues and expenses and property taxes that we provide to the county commissioners, or the county auditor, I'm sorry, for filing at the state level. The detailed budget work commences third and fourth quarter of this year, where we do our departmental and line item budgets. This is a top level macro revenue expense projection summary that is filed with the county. So again, very routine. We do this every year, and our projections are always spot on. I can attest to that. So with that being noted, I would like to motion to adopt resolution 2020-25.
Mr. Ansel moves to adopt resolution number 2020-25. Is there a second?
Scott Meyer, second.
All right, Mr. Meyer seconded it. Any discussion? We've kind
President Biden,
yeah.
this is Scott Myers. I think the mayor made a point, and John also reiterated it, referring to the comments, and I've had some inquiries from other citizens. The time for input as to how we spend our revenues is the fall agenda where we do the budgets, and they're welcome to participate in those conversations at the time and make input of recommendations for us at that time. But this is not when we do that. That's coming up here in October, November.
Yeah, so yeah, appropriations is when we decide how much money we're going to allocate to each line item and sector in the budget. And we do have public hearings, and we are also available by phone call, email, letter as to suggestions, requests, etc. Seeing nothing further, Mr. Paulo, would you please call the roll on the motion to adopt?
Ansel,
Yes.
Cavan,
Yes.
Warden,
Yes.
Myers,
Yes.
Sanders,
Yes.
Silvestri,
Yes.
Costanzic.
Yes.
Okay, resolution number 2020-25 passes. That'll bring us to the third reading of ordinance number 2020-20. This is the charter review suggestions to go on the ballot. I see many members of the Charter Review Commission are attending tonight. In fact, many of them have attended each council meeting that we've had this on the agenda. So they've not only did yeoman's duty in terms of sitting on the commission, but they have patience of saints to have spent 3 Mondays with us, listening to us go on about the suggestions they've made. So before we get to you, Mr. Sanders, I will turn to Mr. Paulo again and ask her to read the title.
Ordinance number 2020-20, an ordinance submitting to the electors of the city of Worcester, Ohio, amendments to the charter of the city of Worcester as provided in section 8.03 Charter Review and declaring an emergency.
Okay, Mr. Sanders, the floor is yours, sir.
Thank you, Mr. President. As we've discussed twice previously now, these are changes that have been made at the recommendation of various entities within the city regarding the changes to our city charter. Before I go any further, I would like to thank the Charter Commission for their hard work on this. Having sat on that board, sat on that commission 10 years ago, there's a lot of information to review. There's only one primary item. Well, let me back up. We have 5 ballot items that are basically that we'll be putting forward to the electorate on the November 3rd election. Each ballot 1 through 5 has little different pieces, and it was split up in such a fashion so that when you went to vote on these items on November 3rd, that it was going to be logical in terms of what was being modified or altered, and then also to try to mitigate the amount of time needed to run through these in terms of reading the changes and understanding them. The only thing that I wish to bring to the attention of council, which completely escaped me until it was brought to my attention here the other day, that one of the second items, or it's actually the first item on ballot number 5 is that at the bequest of the hospital, they have asked the commission, the Charter Commission, to strike out the portion that council would actually approve the ranges of compensation for hospital employees. And in lieu of us approving that, they would just simply utilize the Board of Governors committee structure for review and available hospital compensation market data. At that point, I know that that particular point did not receive much pushback from the administration, and that would be the only new item that I bring attention to. That's simply just because I had missed it previously. So, with that, I would motion to approve ordinance 2020-20.
Mr. Sanders moved to approve ordinance number 2020-20. And was it you, Mr. Ansel, that seconded?
Yes.
And seconded by Mr. Ansel. Any comments, questions? Here's the last time you will get to see this version of the Charter Review Commission.
I'd just like to thank the Charter Review Commission for all their hard work. They've done an excellent job, and they're all volunteers, and we really appreciate their time and effort.
Ditto
Yes,
that. Well done. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much, and be sure to tell everyone
Yes,
what
thank
fun you had, so that we can get some people 10 years from now. All right, seeing nothing else, and again, my heartfelt thanks. I know what it's like to serve on committees. It's out of the goodness of your heart and the betterment of the community, and thank you one and all. Seeing nothing else, would you please call the roll on the motion to adopt, Mr. Paul?
Cavitt,
Yes.
Warden,
Yes.
Myers,
Yes.
Sanders,
Yes.
Silvestri,
Yes.
Bostancic,
Yes.
Ansel.
Yes.
Okay, ordinance number 2020-20 passes. Charter Review Commission, you did your job well, and it's now up to the electors to decide whether or not that your wisdom should be followed, and hopefully it will be. Thank you very much. Now we have a second reading of ordinance number 2020-21. And this says amended, but Mr. Scavelli, if I recall our earlier conversation, this is the one that was originally presented to council that we're voting on tonight.
Yeah, so after the committee meeting, it was decided that the amended version would not be the version that we move forward with, and instead we would be reverting back to the one we had up for first reading at the last meeting.
Okay.
So we will be reverting to that previous version.
So I was incorrect. The amended should be struck from the council agenda on the second reading of ordinance number 2020-21.
It should.
Okay, so Mr. Sanders, we will go to you, but I will have Mr. Paulo, if she would be so kind, to read the title of the ordinance.
Ordinance number 2020-21. An ordinance instructing the city administration to submit statutory notice of council's intent to establish a tax incremental financing district and adopt an economic development plan to support the provision of a direct development grant to enable the creation of the Melrose Drive residential subdivision project.
All right, Mr. Sanders, the floor is yours, sir.
Thank you, Mr. President. A quick clarification, Mr. Scavelli, the email that Mr. Millay sent out at 7:24 this evening is the correct piece of legislation. Is that accurate?
It is.
Okay. So what we have here then, the roundabout, the short version of this is simple. We had a request placed with the administration about the possibility of some type of CRA or some other type of tax incremental financing program for residential development off of Melrose Drive. That request happened approximately a year ago, and we are now at this point now with a lot of conversation, a lot of consternation, and at the end of the day, what we have before us is the notification. While we are in fact going to adopt an economic plan, this is also the notification necessary in that adoption to let the adjacent governmental agencies and notify them of our statutory or to instruct them and have them review this, and then they have a 45-day window in which to respond. At this particular point in time, the specifics of this were discussed at great length, but to briefly discuss it, what the situation was is that this was going to be a 30-year TIF that would provide the developer a little over $1 million in money to be able to utilize as part of the development process. This then would be repaid to the city through what they call a pilot fund. And at that particular point in time, it would be potentially, I mean, we've set it up for 30, it was set up for 30 years, basically just from the standpoint of is it likely that this development would build out in 2 or 3 years? It's possible, but again, we set it up for that 30 years based on models that we had seen from other municipalities. One of the key items in this was the fact that the schools would have only been harmed by 25% of the off of their total amount that they would normally receive, and within a 10-year to 13-year period would be made whole based on the pilot funds. So with that, I would motion to suspend the rules of council and place ordinance 2020-21 on third and final reading.
I'll second.
Was that Bill?
Yeah, this is Bill Bostancic. Mr. Breitendijk, you're still muted.
I was hoping that it'd keep my picture on, but sorry about that. Yeah, Mr. Sanders moved to end the rules, and Mr. Bostancic seconded the motion to suspend the rules. So, Mr. Paulo, would you please call the roll on the suspension of the rules?
Bostancic,
Yes.
Myers,
Yes.
Sanders,
Yes.
Silvestri,
Yes.
Warden,
Yes.
Ansel,
Yes.
Cavan.
Yes.
Okay, the rules are suspended. Mr. Sanders, do you have a motion for us?
Motion to adopt.
Motion to adopt by Mr. Sanders. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Ms. Warden seconds it. Thank you, Ms. Warden. Discussion.
Thank you, Mr. Breitendijk. I'll be very brief. I wanted to bring up one point, and that is I've already made my position known on the major aspect of discussion with respect to this ordinance, but I just wanted to be read into the minutes that I have received overwhelming feedback in terms of how this development may connect to the neighboring development in the future. And I just want to say, one of the things that I'd like to have considered should this project go forward in the future under different circumstances, and I hope and trust that it will, because we do have a need in our community for housing. But I want to just have this into the minutes that one of the things that should be considered is a gate. Because of the current situation on Mel Lane and Mellon Circle, I think there should be a locked gate only able to be opened by safety services so that foot traffic is not endangered on the street, since there are no sidewalks on Mel Lane and Mellon Circle. So it's a safety issue. If someone wants to check out the corner of Milltown and Melrose, there is a safety gate in the apartment complex there for the same reason, so that folks don't cut through from Milltown and Melrose and back the other way. So it's been done before, and I would ask the administration, should this project proceed under different circumstances in the future, that this be considered and looked at as a necessary component. Thank you.
Anyone else? Mr. Ansel, I saw you turn yourself off and now turn yourself back on. Do you have something to say?
Nothing further, Mr. President. Thank
Okay.
you.
I didn't want to cut you short here. Well, seeing nothing else, would you please call the roll on the motion to adopt?
Stanzik,
No.
Myers,
Yes.
Sanders,
Yes.
Silvestri,
No.
Warden,
No.
Ansel,
No.
and Cavan.
No.
All right, ordinance number 2020-21 in its original format does not pass. That turns to item 7 of the, we turn to item 7 of the agenda, new business. First reading of resolution number 2020-34. It will be presented by Mr. Cavan. It's regarding a purchase of a vehicle. It is budgeted, so 3 readings will not be required. But what will be required is for Mr. Paulo to please read the title.
Resolution number 2020-34. A resolution authorizing the Director of Administration to purchase a vehicle in accordance with the capital plan for 2020.
Mr. Cavan, the floor is yours, sir.
Thank you, Mr. President. As President Bidendijk mentioned, it is a budgeted item. We need to replace an ambulance with the fire department. We're looking at replacing a 2010 Horton ambulance. It is in the scheduled replacement. We're looking at a $280,000 expenditure, but we're also looking at a nice ambulance that is going to save us money from the aspect of we're not going to have breakdowns with the other ambulance. We do need something that's going to, for certain, be able to get to the scene. So there is a few new items on the this ambulance that I haven't seen before. One of them being a UV light, HEPA filters. In case there is some COVID cases that our paramedics would have to deal with. But again, it is just time to replace that ambulance, and we're getting a top of the line one. So I suppose if anyone has any questions, I think Chief Saley's on board. But otherwise, I would like to make a motion to adopt.
All right, motion to adopt by Mr. Cavan. Is there a second?
Scott Myers seconds.
Second by Scott Myers. Okay, discussion. Boy, Mr. Chief Saley, you've been rather scarce recently. I didn't know if you were hiding in a bunker because of COVID-19.
Well, this is Barry Saley, Fire Chief. I appreciate President and Council bringing this. I have been somewhat in our bunker. We've been aggressively preparing and dealing with the COVID situation. And it's been all hands on deck in the safety service environment to handle this and make sure that we're able to serve our citizens in the most capable way. So.
Well, I'll tell you, selfishly speaking, being in the at-risk gauge for COVID-19, I would ask the rest of council to do me a favor and pass this budgeted item, please.
I would appreciate that as well. And our ambulances are our workhorses. They run, 80% of our call volume within the fire division, over 3,000 calls. Having a piece of apparatus that is able to work at a moment's notice is critical for us to continue the level of service that we desire to provide to our citizens. So I would encourage council as well to pass this. And I always thank you for your support.
Ms. Warden?
Thank you. I have three brief questions, basically just clarifications, if you will. First of all, will the 2010 ambulance that we're replacing, will that be auctioned off or will it remain a part of the city's fleet?
Okay, so it is our intent at this point to continue with the memorandum of understanding that we had with Jeromesville Fire Department with our last replacement. And the agreement, and I confirmed this with their assistant chief today, and obviously their board needs to approve it, but we have a memorandum of understanding that we would sell that unit to them, but for a 3-year period, they basically have it as a reserve for us. So in the event that multiple units are down for mechanical reasons for an extended period of time, that we would be able to obtain that medic unit for us to utilize to maintain services. So it's been a mutually beneficial arrangement between us and another smaller volunteer organization, the fire department. So it is my intent with administration's approval to continue that memorandum of understanding and sell it to them.
Okay, yeah, thank you. Next, I'd like to answer, there were two back-to-back requests. I don't know if one was just the formal version and the other was the informal, but they both had different amounts on them. So one is requesting 300,000 and the other request is for 280,000. So I'm wondering if that additional 20,000 is the cost to fit the unit with the lift or load system. I thought that was more expensive though.
It is more expensive. The initial capital request form that was on the second sheet of the agenda was the initial budgeted request that we put out last fall. And when we did budgetary numbers, our first cost from the manufacturer was the 300,000 with the power load system. Over the past first half of the year, we've been able to dial in our actual spec and really find out what is needed, what's most effective, what was beneficial in the previous med units, and made some changes to the spec to make it more effective. And we were able to reduce the cost down to the 280. Which gives us the room for the additional equipment as the power load system, which we haven't included in the actual build in the past med units, and also the UV light disinfection systems that we're looking at adding into the system. Now, obviously, that wasn't a prevalent piece of equipment until the COVID situation occurred and really brought into other infectious disease concerns. Recently, we disinfect manually every day and on a detailed basis weekly. So our med units are clean, but to get the invisible bug, for lack of a better term, we wanted to invest in that particular item, which falls into this. Now, understanding we're supposed to be good stewards of the we wanted to make sure that our pencil was sharp and we were giving the most accurate estimate of the cost, which is where we were estimating the 280 at.
Thank you. And then one just quick question. In your request, you mentioned that the new vehicle will allow us to consider remounting or buying versus buying new in the future to save money. Could you give us an estimate of how much it might cost to remount an ambulance? That's kind of a cool idea to sort of recycle or repurpose.
Yeah, so two medic unit replacements ago, we did a remount as a test, and we wanted to see what the lifespan of that replacement or remount unit would be versus new. We haven't been able to actually find the lifespan yet because it hasn't gone through its entire lifespan cycle. So when we do remount them, they're about a $50,000 reduction in total. But we're obviously we're only remounting the chassis and reusing a lot of the patient compartment boxes. Mm-hmm. So Mr. Cavan and I discussed on Friday, he inquired on the same question, is if this was a possibility. And we are going to continue to evaluate that option in the future, but that would also require us to place one of our medic units out of service for approximately months while it does go and get remounted. And under the current with COVID and needing 4 medic units operation the entire time, and the current national level of spiking that's going on, I don't necessarily feel comfortable with placing a medic unit out of service currently.
Sure.
So next replacement item that a council and here the next few years, we would evaluate the remount and more detail.
Thanks, Chief Saley.
Thank you.
Chief Saley, Scott Myers. Do we know whether we could retrofit the existing ambulances with the UV system?
So we can, and we've been doing a considerable amount of research. If we use UV, if we use HEPA, there has a microbial disinfection light as well. And we're looking at some alternative portable UV lighting systems that aren't necessarily mounted directly in the ambulance, but that we can put in the ambulance. They're portable, and then we can use one unit for all of the other med units. Now, the nice thing of having one dedicated to that particular unit is that when the doors close, it automatically comes on and can disinfect the unit when no one's in there. So that is something that we will try to purchase here towards the end of the year, especially if budgetary funds are available. If not, we'll be looking at adding that request to the 2021 budget.
Thank you, Chief. Well, I can assure you that at least with regard to my vote, we will make the funds available if you find that you can do such a thing and make it happen as sooner rather than later. I know later we're going to be approving a resolution to be requesting our portion of the COVID CARES funds that the government has allocated, and this would be something that those funds could be utilized for. So something certainly we should be considering as we go forward.
And I appreciate that. I was actually notified today that we received the EMS grant from the state of Ohio, which we do get money usually annually, but I present that to my EMS division captain and supply acquisition unit member. And that is one of the things that we're going to look at using that money for, because we always try to purchase something to upgrade our EMS system with that grant funding. And that, I think that in the current crisis that we're in, that may be the very best piece of equipment for us to make sure that our staff is protected and also the citizens that are riding in those apparatus.
Thank you. Good to hear.
Thanks.
Chief Saley, one more thing, if I may. I just wanted to ask the question for the clarification of those that might be listening. With the replacement of this 2010 reserve unit, this puts our fleet on a fantastic footing during these times, does it not? I mean, we really don't have a reserve unit now. We've got four really good units in really good working order. Is that accurate?
Well, yes, we are very, very fortunate to have solid equipment. Council has been very supportive of the fire division, which, I appreciate. This replacement will replace our reserve medic unit. So we currently have 3 that are frontline units at each fire station. And we have a reserve unit at fire station number 1 for any recall personnel to come in, or if there is a mechanical issue that one of the frontline units have to go out, that gets brought into service. This particular purchase will allow us to place the order. It will not be ready for approximately 10 to 11 months. So currently we're stable, but as mechanical issues are occurring, I can tell you this replacement unit, when I pulled it out to run one of the frontline medics down to the garage for normal maintenance, it was running rough. And we just want to make sure that we're providing the equipment. So I think by getting the request in now, getting the purchase in place, allowing the build to occur, we'll be able to maintain that very solid fleet that we've always provided.
Excellent. Thank you.
I would add that we are obligated to provide service to the city of Worcester as best we can. And I would, on behalf of, I know a lot of citizens, thank the fire chief and the fire division for helping keep us safe. Thank you.
Seeing nothing else, Mr. Paula, would you please call the roll on the motion to adopt?
Myers,
Yes.
Sanders,
Yes.
Silvestri,
Yes.
Warden,
Yes.
Ansel,
Yes.
Cavan,
Yes.
Bastancik.
Yes.
Resolution number 2020-34 passes. Let's turn our attention to the first reading of ordinance number 2020-23, dealing with the special assessment there on Mill Lane and Mellon Circle. It'll be presented by Mr. Bostancic. It is slated for 3 readings. Before I get to Mr. Bostancic, Mr. Paulo, would you please read the title?
Ordinance number 2020-23, an ordinance levying special assessments for the replacement of drive pipes and associated materials on Mill Lane and Mellon Circle and declaring an emergency.
Mr. Bostancic, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. This piece of legislation is, I think, is really a collaborative effort with the residents between the residents of Mill Lane and Mellon Circle, council members, and many members of the administration. What precipitated all this were issues along Mill Lane and Mellon Circle. During heavy rains, there would be a lot of flooding and ponding of water along the streets down there. Biggest problem was that when this development was originally built, they were outside the city of Wooster limits, and there was no requirement for improved streets. So what we have there for drainage are ditches and dry pipes. And over the years, they have been cleaned out before, I believe, over the years, but it hasn't been for a long time. Debris builds up, the dry pipes have become misaligned, and the water is not able to flow very well through those. And it's also, the other problem is it's a very flat area as well. So there's really not a lot of incline to clean out the pipes if you get a lot of water or anything. They just kind of move slowly along. I know a number of us from council have been out there, and administration been out there and walking and talking to a lot of the members out there. And we decided that to really get things moving along, we hold an infrastructure committee hearing, and I believe every member in council attended that a number of months ago. And the administration presented 4 plans, I believe it was 4, to the residents, and they picked one, and they were able to they went out and got petitions signed by at least 60%, by the majority of residents along those streets, equaling more than 60% of the frontage. What will be done is, I'll read this real quickly. The city will regrade all the roadway ditches on Mill Lane and Mellon Circle. As part of this regrading project, the city will replace all the metal driveway pipes. The city will remove debris, sticks, leaves, etc., from the outlet channel flowing northward through Mellon Circle. The city will also annually inspect and perform maintenance along those ditches as needed. And what the residents have agreed to do, the city is going to provide the labor, and residents will just be charged or assessed the actual cost of the dry pipe and any associated material, any associated fill material that will be placed over it. The residents, though, will also be required to, they will also be responsible for replacing any top material, say asphalt or concrete, that has to be taken up to remove the pipes. And I know the city will be very gentle when they try to get them out, as to make the smallest footprint as possible to that they will have to replace. So what we're trying to do here, the only thing we're going to vote on here is giving us the ability to assess for the dry pipes the actual cost of the dry pipes and the fill material. And I'll open up for discussion. Is there any questions or comments? I know we have several members of the Mill Lane along here as well. If anyone would like to have any comments.
Okay, Steve, you are muted. So if you want to unmute yourself, you can go ahead and be the first one to talk. All right,
Am
we
I
got you now.
muted? Am I okay?
You're good, Steve.
Okay. I guess first I'd like to just say thank you to all the different folks that were involved. It's been a long process. We do have a flooding issue. We do have a water issue, and it's been one that's kind of gotten aggravated over time. There's a culvert out the back that goes all the way from behind our place, behind Mellon Circle, all the way out to Smithville Western under a culvert there. That's been cleaned out by the city, and kudos to the gentleman who did the job. It's absolutely first class, well done. It's got some cleanup to do, but the clean out of the ditch itself was terrific, and we already notice a difference. If that's the kind of work that's coming forward from the city, we have no reason to expect otherwise. We really look forward to this. Some of the driveways got a little higher than they should be, and it's right. It's flat, but it's not totally flat. We've got about 2-3 foot drop, and we can make that work if everybody's drive pipes are consistent and on the same slope. That was the whole point, and where Roger Kovalarczyk came in and did a lot of work with a surveyor, and it started out interesting, but boy, we all started working together, and it's actually been a good process. I'm grateful to all the folks that were involved. I'll be quiet because I know some of the other folks want to weigh in here. Thank you.
Okay, if anyone else wants to, go ahead. You're muted now, so I'm.
No.
I think Val would like to talk.
Yeah, good evening, everybody. Val Williams, Mill Lane. As I stated in the letter that we sent in with petition, there's an awful lot of support and cooperation from everybody at the city level, and Mr. Kovalarczyk has really come about to help us with a viable solution to our stormwater movement here. And I want to commend him and Mr. Scavelli for keeping us on track through all. It's been a good process. Looking forward to having it implemented. And as you can see by the what Mr. Bostanek mentioned, that we had a great majority of the folks agree to the petition and wide majority of the frontage. So it showed a real good neighborhood empathy for resolving a problem. And that's the kind of neighborhood we have here and the kind of neighborhood we want to be in here. And we thank you all for your support.
Easy. Okay. Anyone else? No more? I would, if there are no more comments, I'd like to, can we do a third and final on this, Mike?
You would need to suspend the rules.
Okay,
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I would, if there are no other comments, I would like to get this moving forward and make a motion to suspend the rules and put this on third and final reading.
All right, Mr. Bostanek has moved to suspend the rules. Is there a second?
David Silvestri, second.
You got a lot of seconds that time, Mike.
Okay, I will pick Mr. Silvestri because his picture's right in the middle of my screen, which is where my eyes went to, even though I saw Ansel, I think you were a little bit slower.
Yeah, I concede.
Okay, so it'll be seconded by Mr. Silvestri to suspend the rules. Would you please call the roll on that, Mr. Paulo?
Sanders,
Yes.
Silvestri,
Yes.
Warden,
Yes.
Ansel,
Yes.
Cavan,
Yes.
Bostanek,
Yes.
Myers.
Yes.
Okay, the rules are suspended. Do you have another motion for us?
Yes, I move to adopt.
Motion to adopt by Mr. Bostanek. Is there a second? Come on,
Second.
Ansel. Mr. Cavan seconded it. Any further discussion? I'm glad that this was a cooperative effort, and it seems that most residents are pleased with the end results.
Mr. President, I'll be very brief. I just wanted to thank everyone for joining the call tonight. There was a lot of collaboration, both with the residents of the neighborhood and also folks on council. It's been over a year. I remember when I got the call last May and set up a meeting for June 5th of 2019. And there's been a lot of help all along the way. And I just thank you for all those that helped carry the ball. And we're glad we're in the end zone and we made this happen. So this is how government is supposed to work on behalf of our citizens. Thank you.
Seeing nothing further, would you please call the roll on the motion to adopt?
Sanders,
Yes.
Silvestri,
Yes.
Warden,
Yes.
Ansel,
Yes.
Cavan,
Yes.
Bostancic,
Yes.
Myers.
Yes.
Ordinance number 2020-23 passes.
Thank you all.
Okay, looking at ordinance number 2020-24, this will be presented by Mr. Silvestri. It's slated for 3 readings. If you would, Mr. Paulo, please read the title.
Ordinance number 2020-24. An ordinance authorizing the mayor to enter into a pre-annexation agreement with certain property owners for the purpose of facilitating the annexation and extension of utility services to those properties and declaring an emergency.
Mr. Silvestri, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'll be very succinct this evening. It's just very straightforward. A property owner at 903 West Highland Avenue has requested to enter into a pre-annexation agreement. So they would like to take advantage of city utilities. They're currently in the county. The only alternative would be to wait a full 6 months for the full annexation process. But with this pre-annexation agreement, it expedites things. And I believe it is a failure of a septic system that is pushing this forward and necessitating this need. So if we could honor it tonight, I am looking to suspend the rules and place this on 3rd and final reading.
Well, can I take that as a motion?
You can, Mr. President, please do.
All right. Motion to suspend the rules by Mr. Silvestri. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Ansel. And I should remind everyone, I think we had a city engineer somewhere that had a similar problem, but his name will remain nameless. All right, would you please call the roll on the motion to suspend the rules?
Silvestri,
Yes.
Warden,
Yes.
Ansel,
Yes.
Cavan,
Yes.
Bostancic,
Yes.
Myers,
Yes.
Sanders.
Yes.
Okay, the rules are suspended. I turn to you again, Mr. Silvestri.
Yes, motion to adopt, Mr. President. Thank you.
Motion to adopt by Mr. Silvestri. Is there a second?
Scott Myers, second.
Seconded by Mr. Myers. Any discussion?
Yes, this is John Campbell. I would like to thank council for quick consideration of this matter.
Thank you, John, for joining us this evening. I appreciate it.
Well, hopefully he still wants to come into the city after seeing how the council operates. Just kidding, just kidding. This is the finest organization I've had the pleasure of belonging to. Seeing nothing further, would you please call the roll on the motion to adopt?
Silvestri,
Yes.
Warden,
Yes.
Ansel,
Yes.
Cavan,
Yes.
Bostancic,
Yes.
Myers,
Yes.
Sanders.
Yes.
Ordinance number 2020-24 passes, and well, we'll be welcoming you soon, Mr. Campbell. That brings us to resolution number 2020-35. They'll be presented by Mr. Bostancic. I note that this one is budgeted, so would not require 3 readings, therefore no suspension of the rules. It does require me to turn to Ms. DiPaolo and ask her to please read the title.
Resolution number 2020-35, a resolution authorizing the Director of Administration to advertise according to law, enter into a contract with the lowest and best bidder for the construction of a parking lot on East South Street and declaring an emergency.
Okay, Mr. Bostancic, the floor is yours, sir.
Okay, thank you. Just to give you tell you what the costs are going to be, the total estimated costs for this project is $185,000. We are getting $77,500 in CDBG money, and the other $107,000 is coming out of capital funds. The buildings, we bought this I think it was last year. So to help alleviate the parking situation on the eastern part of around Larwell Street. This is ready to, construction on that parking lot is ready to begin. The buildings that were on there have been demolished and the site is ready for construction. And as most of the time, all the engineering, design and construction and inspection will be performed by the city. It's going to add, let me see here, I had written this down. It is going to add 38 regular spots and there's going to be 3 handicap spots. So it's a fair amount of new parking for that area of town. That's it. It's pretty simple. Any comments?
Did you misspeak when you said Larville Street, Bill?
Oh, yes, I did miss it. It's on South Street, but Liberty, in that area of town. Thank you. It was one of those L streets.
So I take it you move to adopt.
I move to adopt.
Motion to adopt by Mr. Bostancic. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Warden. It's a good thing you have a distinctive voice there, Ms. Warden. Okay, any other further discussion? Well, we bought the property and this is what our intent. So it would be kind of foolish if we didn't follow through with what our intent was. So, and it'll be a great addition and people are always complaining about parking. So one last area to complain about. I just hope that next year at this time we can be moving out and about and not have to worry about whether to shake hands, whether we should wear a mask, and we have to stay 6 feet at least apart. So anyhow, this is hopefully progress. Seeing nothing else other than me blathering away, would you please call the roll on the motion to adopt?
Warden,
Yes.
Ansel. Ansel,
Yes, excuse me.
Cavan,
Yes.
Bostancic,
Yes.
Myers,
Yes.
Sanders,
Yes.
Silvestri.
Yes.
Resolution number 2020-35 passes. This brings us to ordinance number 2020-25. It'll be presented by Mr. Sanders. It's slated for 3 readings. We've done several things with regard to these respective property owners, and it's finally reached the fruition stage of them actually applying to annex into our august city. Slated for 3 readings, but Mr. Sanders, before I get to you, I will turn once again to Ms. DiPaolo and ask her to please read the title.
Ordinance number 2020-25, an ordinance accepting the annexation of territory located at 2150 Oak Hill Road and contiguous to the corporation limits. Presented by Robert Reynolds, Esquire, agent for petitioners Terry and Beverly Raber.
Mr. Sanders, the floor is yours, sir.
Thank you, Mr. President. as we go back, turn the cans of time back, in March of this year, we had approved the pre-annexation agreement with the property owners at 150 Oak Hill Road. It then proceeded to the commissioners, where it was approved by the commissioners on May 6th. So at this point, this is the official request for annexation and our acceptance of it. And with that, I would have a motion to suspend the rules of council and place ordinance 2020-25 on third and final reading.
Mr. Sanders moved to suspend the rules. Is there a second?
Second, Silvestri.
Second by Mr. Silvestri. Would you please call the roll on the motion to suspend the rules?
Ansel,
Yes.
Bastancik,
Yes.
Cavan,
Yes.
Myers,
Yes.
Sanders,
Yes.
Silvestri,
Yes.
and Warden.
Yes.
Okay, the rules are suspended. Do you have a motion for us, Mr. Sanders?
Motion to adopt, Mr. President.
Motion to adopt. Is there a second?
Mr. Silvestri will second.
Seconded by Mr. Silvestri. Any further discussion? Seeing none, would you please, Mr. Paulo, read the, or call the roll on the motion to adopt?
Ansel,
Yes.
Bastancik,
Yes.
Cavan,
Yes.
Myers,
Yes.
Sanders,
Yes.
Silvestri,
Yes.
and Warden.
Yes.
Okay, ordinance number 2020-25 passes. It looks like we've increased by one household, so still growing. That brings us to ordinance number 2020-26. It is going to be presented by Mr. Ansel. It is slated for 3 readings, so would require suspension of the rules if they wanted to pass tonight. Before we get to you, Mr. Ansel, I'll ask Mr. Paulo to please read the title.
Hey, President Bytendike,
Yes.
Craig Sanders has his hand up.
Oh, yeah.
I need to recuse myself related to this piece of legislation this evening.
Okay. I'm sorry I didn't see your hand. It's a little, I'm not as swift as Mr. Paulo and can scan all those pictures in front of her.
You ready now? Okay.
I see Mr. Malay, are you recusing yourself too?
No, I'm not, but I just wanted to inform Mr. Scavelli that we have a few guests joining us on this request and the other one coming up, and should be coming in. Thank you.
I am dealing with a couple comments, but I will let them in.
Hey, thank you so much. And Mr. Erickson's joining us for this. Just wanted to offer a warm welcome. Thank you.
Hi, Jonathan.
All right. Any other housekeeping details before I let Ms. DiPaolo use her pipes to read the title of this? Seeing none, take it away, Ms. DiPaolo.
Ordinance number 2020-26. An ordinance authorizing the mayor to enter into an enterprise zone agreement with Krupp Moving and Storage LLC and KV Management LLC for certain tax incentives and declaring an emergency.
Okay, Mr. Ansel, the floor is yours, and we will note that Mr. Sanders did recuse himself on this matter.
Thank you, Mr. President. This is a very important piece of legislation this evening. Timing is of the essence. We're preparing for a recess, and I'm going to motion to suspend the rules and move this to third and final reading this evening. This is a very unique request for a 75% abatement for 2.5 years. This is the smallest request that I've recommended since my time on council. It's very, very reasonable, and it really needs to hit a window of timing to go through the planning process and commence construction before inclement weather arrives. But KV Management LLC, a property management company here in Worcester, and Krupp Moving and Storage LLC, an employer of household goods specializing in services focusing in our area, Akron and Canton, that has a large contract that requires expansion from their existing space. So the developer is building a 55,000 square foot facility for the economies of scale derived from that size of facility and to support the existing businesses at that location or on that property site. And Krupp will be utilizing the 25,000 square feet upon completion. It coincides with their lease currently on Cleveland Road. They're in desperate need of high cube space. This will be a unique facility to store pod containers of household goods storage and relocation. As I highlighted, this is 2.5 years only because the original lease commitment with Krupp is a 5-year lease, and by standards, you know, we agree to abate for half of the initial commitment. And Krupp currently employs, on the balance of the 30,000 square feet, will be unabated, and we'll go through the positive financial impact associated with this build initiative. They currently employ 18 full-time employees. They plan on adding an additional employee at this facility, combined payroll of $625,000 plus annually. If this option is not secured, they will be forced to relocate to another facility outside our area to support this. So it is a very urgent need and request. The current property value at that site is $707,720. The annual tax obligation is $20,106. Without the abatement, the proposed $3 to $3.2 million speculative investment will increase the tax to $85,499 to $91,131, depending on the final project completion cost. So with the 75% abatement, that reduces the tax obligation for the first 2.5 years to $63,173 to $66,918. So you can see the significant impact there. $40,000 annually will be derived with the abatement for 2-year periods. The applicant will save $22,276 to $24,213 annually. So the total savings after the 2.5-year period will be $55,000 to $60,000. The net gain with abatement, as I highlighted, will be to the city of $43,000 to $46,000. But after that tax abatement, it goes up significantly. So it is a really highly qualified short-term abatement request that serves a bona fide need for the developer and the renter. The unique thing about this, the developer is allowing Krupp the option to purchase the building at the end of the 5-year term, which is a unique scenario also, that if their business continues to expand, this will be a permanent location for them. So this was approved unanimously by Wooster Growth Corporation at their last meeting. And I'm hopeful tonight that we can move this on quickly and secure approval to allow the developer and the user, Krupp Moving and Storage, to have a definitive go forward plan. So with that, I would motion to suspend the rules and move ordinance 2020-26 to third and final reading this evening.
Second that, Mr. Ansel.
All right, Motion to suspend the rules by Mr. Ansel, and did I hear you, Miss Warren, second it, or?
Yes.
Yes, okay. All right, that being said, would you please call the roll there, Mr. Paulo, on the motion to suspend the rules?
Bastancik,
Yes.
Cavan,
Yes.
Myers,
Yes.
Silvestri,
Yes.
Warden,
Yes.
and Ansel.
Yes.
Okay, the rules are suspended. I turn to you again, Mr.
Motion
Ansel.
to adopt ordinance 2020-26.
Motion to adopt by Mr. Ansel. Is there a second?
Silvestri, second.
I didn't see who was first, so,
That's okay. But David can be the second. That's fine.
okay, Mr. Silvestri, seconded. I should add that, even though there's some tax abatement here, the upside is there's millions of dollars going to be injected into the economy based on the construction costs. And, we can't ever overlook how that drives the economy, because it used to be early on when I was on council, when we were keeping notes with papyrus clay tablets, it said for every $1 spent on a project, a ripple effect of $7 through the local economy. So, keep that in mind. So that's my take on some of these. It sounds like a win-win for everyone involved.
And I will highlight, President Bidendijk, this is a significant investment for a 55,000 square foot facility. And it does service the immediate need of a user, but 30,000 square foot of speculative space is a bold move on behalf of Mr. and Mrs. Erickson. So well done.
Anyone else? Seeing none, would you please call the roll, Mr. Paulo, on the motion to adopt?
Bastancik,
Yes.
Cavan,
Yes.
Myers,
Yes.
Silvestri,
Yes.
Warden,
Yes.
and Ansel.
Yes.
All right, ordinance number 2020-26 passes. Good luck to you, Mr. Krupp and Mr. Erickson.
Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it,
guys. Thank you.
Now, number 7, under new business, ordinance number 2020-27. This will be presented by Mr. Ansel. It's slated for 3 readings. Before I get to you, Mr. Ansel, Mr. Paula, would you mind once again reading the title of this ordinance?
Ordinance number 2020-27, an ordinance authorizing the mayor to enter into an enterprise zone agreement with Hydac Technology Corp. And Baker Properties, Mount Vernon LTD, for certain tax incentives and declaring an emergency.
Mr. Ansel, the floor is yours.
Yes, another very unique piece.
Can I
of
interrupt and we'll make a note that Mr. Sanders is no longer out there in the hinterlands and has joined us with regard to this matter.
Thank you, Mr. President. Again, another very exciting piece of expansion within our city limits. Economic development is alive and well in Worcester, and it's always reassuring to have these type of opportunities presented. This is a bit unique because it's a joint venture in collaborative spirit between Baker Properties, Mount Vernon Limited, which is a property management and development company, and Hydac Technology Corporation. It's a employer manufacturer specializing in the design and manufacturing of industrial valves and related equipment, and their business is expanding within our city limits. They require more space, so the in collaborative spirit, the developer is proposing a 22,000 square foot warehouse, light manufacturing, construction venture or Venture Boulevard in the city's enterprise zone. It is being requested for 75% for 10 years. This facility will have expansion options. So as Hydec's business grows, they will be able to expand within our city at a facility designed and suited for multiple expansions in the future. Again, this is unique because Hydec Technology Corp has a 10-year lease with an option to purchase the facility at the end of 5 years. So it's their total commitment on the site is 20 years. It's a long-term plan. The developer and the tenant would like to move this, again, fast track because of the timing associated with it to get it final approval and commenced before inclement weather. It is within our enterprise zone, EZ 389B, so it's in a slated area that's targeted for this type of development. The economics are also very positive. The current undeveloped parcel is valued at about $13,000 and it generates about $366 tax obligation. Without the abatement, after construction and after abatement turn, it'll go up to about $35,000 to $42,000. With the abatement, it will go to about $9,000 to $11,000 range. So the applicant saves $25,000 a year to $31,000 a year over the term, about $250,000. Then after that, our net property tax gain will go up significantly on an annualized basis. So the cumulative net property tax gain will be $85,000 to $106,000. And that's all in the enterprise zone request summary. And we have a completed enterprise partnership proposal that meets the criteria. If this is not constructed, Hydec will be forced to relocate to another larger facility outside our city limits. They don't want to do that. They want to stay inside the city limits. This was unanimously approved also by Wooster Growth Corporation in our most recent meeting. Jonathan's here. This is a little more complex, but it does fit with our guidelines for enterprise zone. It's very consistent. The developer has a track record of performing and it meets the needs of an important local company that's on an expansion trail right at this point in time. So with that, I would move to suspend the rules and move ordinance 2020-27 to third and final reading this evening.
All right, motion to suspend the rules by Mr. Ansel. Is there a second?
Scott Myers, second.
Mr. Whitendike, please, point of order.
Yes. Mr. Sanders.
I wish to submit to the author of the document the actual enterprise request summary that stated down there in the second paragraph that Baker Properties, Mount Vernon Limited, the site owner, will utilize Freeman Building Systems to construct the building. I wanted to go on record that at this point that has not been contract signed at the point of this writing. So I appreciate the city's enthusiasm to put a project in my pocket. At this time, that is not the case, and I want to make it known and publicly known that that is not the case as of this writing.
And so that being clarified, I assume you see no reason, and I don't see either, why you would have to recuse yourself.
Thus the reason why I make the statement. So at this point, I will not be recusing myself related to.
All right, and that's a point well taken, and we'll make sure it makes it into the minutes and on the record. So anyways, there's a motion to suspend the rules by Mr. Ansel, and I'm still looking for a second.
Scott Myers, second.
Seconded by Mr. Myers. Ms. DiPaolo, would you please call the roll on the suspension of the rules?
Cavan,
Yes.
Myers,
Yes.
Sanders,
Yes.
Silvestri,
Yes.
Warden,
Yes.
Ansel,
Yes.
and Bastancik.
Yes.
Okay, the rules are suspended, and we still have everyone on board with regard to voting on this next motion by Mr. Ansel.
I would motion to adopt ordinance number 2020-27.
Okay, motion to adopt by Mr. Ansel. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Silvestri. I not only saw his lips move, but I saw his hand go up. So I appreciate you putting your hand up there, Mr. Silvestri. Further discussion. Mr. Malay, how many jobs projected maybe here in the next 10 years? Do you know?
So this project has 11 Wooster employees today, again, who specialize in what's really a high-tech element of our industrial capabilities, just in level of services that our community provides. I'd like to just offer a quick warm welcome to Mr. Michael Tiega, who is the author of the letter that you saw in your packet from Hydac Technology Corporation. And Michael can correct me if I'm wrong, but there are 11 employees today with the aspirations of hiring at least 3 more in the short term as this company moves to add a new production line to introduce a new technology that'll, again, serve a national economy here with potential to work as a headquarters region for the greater northeastern, east Midwestern portion of the United States.
And that's correct. And furthermore, the employees that we have are about 70% salary and 30% hourly. So we're weighted heavier on the upper level, the engineering and the salespeople. And as we continue to grow, we'll add hourly people, but we'll also be adding the salary individual as well.
Well, it sounds like a wonderful addition. And again, I'll reiterate what I said on the last one. The amount of money that is going to be spent going to be dispersed in the economy. So in these kind of hard times with COVID-19, adding construction dollars is always a good thing in the economy, good or bad. Anyone else? Seeing none, would you please call the roll on the motion to adopt?
Cavan,
Yes.
Myers,
Yes.
Sanders,
Yes.
Silvestri,
Yes.
Warden,
Yes.
Ansel,
Yes.
and Bastancik.
Yes.
Ordinance number 2020-27 passes. Good luck with your endeavors. It sounds like an exciting project and an exciting business, and high tech is always a good thing to have in this day and age. So we appreciate you staying in Worcester and expanding.
Well, thank you. And on behalf of Hydac, I'd like to thank everybody for their consideration as well.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Very
Thank
welcome.
you. Well, as Casey Coleman would say, we're rounding third and heading home. This is the penultimate piece of legislation. Resolution number 2020-36. It'll be presented by Mr. Ansel. It sounds like a good thing, money in our coffers. It's slated for 3 readings, so would require suspension of the rules. I'm not sure why we would want to not suspend the rules when we're getting money from the coronavirus relief distribution fund, but stranger things have happened. Mr. Paulo, would you please read the title?
Resolution number 2020-36. A resolution to request the City of Worcester's portion of the county coronavirus relief distribution fund from the Wayne County Auditor and declaring an emergency.
Mr. Ansel, the floor is yours, sir.
Yes, I want to thank Joel Montgomery for providing the overview of this proposed legislation. As we are aware, the state of Ohio House Bill 481 was signed into the law by the governor on Friday, June 19th, 2020. This bill was drafted as a necessity to provide coronavirus relief funding from the state of Ohio to local governments that did not receive funding from the federal government. So this is a state initiative. And H-Bill 481 distributes the funding based on 2019 local government fund distribution. As we all know, we get our state intergovernmental annual funding. It's been reduced significantly, but that's somewhere in the $600,000 annual range. And this now will allocate based on that an additional $700,000 approximate of available additional funds that we might be eligible to be reimbursed based on quantifiable expenses directly related to fighting and protecting COVID-19. I spoke with Joel and they are compiling those figures right now. Currently, it's significantly less than the potential $700,000 pool. So there could be some return of funding, but all we're now is asking or allowing the city to try to secure what funds we might be allocated based on our intergovernmental funding parameters through the OBM grant portal. This is a grant request, just like PPP was to small businesses. And then once the legislation is passed and finalized, we'll file our summary request with the county auditor's office, and then the funds will be distributed. So hopefully we will be eligible for more than less of the available fundings, but I know the city administration will do a great job accounting for those COVID relating prevention expenses that are engaged by the city. So it's really a no-brainer, very straightforward. Joel's here. Joel, thank you for your proactive summary, overviewing to council what this was all about, and Andre. So we're in a good position to get some funding. The county will, and other surrounding municipalities and townships will also be eligible. So it's a good thing on behalf of the state and our governor. We should be very appreciative and go ahead and provide approval to proceed with the grant. So I will motion to suspend the rules and move resolution 2020-36 to third and final reading this evening.
Mr. Ansel has moved to suspend the rules. Is there a second?
Second, Mark Cavan.
Seconded by Mark Cavan. Mr. Paulo, would you please call the roll on the suspension of the rules?
Myers,
Yes.
Sanders,
Yes.
Silvestri,
Yes.
Warden,
Yes.
Ansel,
Yes.
Bastancik,
Yes.
Cavan.
Yes.
The rules are suspended. I look to you again, Mr.
Motion to adopt,
Ansel.
Mr. President.
Motion to adopt by Mr. Ansel. Is there a second?
Scott Myers, second.
Scott Myers, I heard you first. Mr. Myers seconded. Any further discussion? It's not free money. We're getting our own tax dollars in essence back, but it's always nice to get some of the monies we send down to Columbus back to Worcester. Seeing none, would you please call the roll on the motion to adopt?
Myers,
Yes.
Sanders,
Yes.
Silvestri,
Yes.
Warden,
Yes.
Ansel,
Yes.
Bastancik,
Yes.
and Cavan.
Yes.
Resolution number 2020-36 passes. Our final piece of legislation will be presented by Mr. Sanders. It is slated for 3 readings My guess is it might stay on 3 readings since this has to do with changes of the health code, etc. But I won't presume what Mr. Sanders is thinking. Before I get to you, Mr. Sanders, I will look for the last time to Mr. Paulo to read the title of this ordinance.
Ordinance number 2020-28, an ordinance amending chapter 521, Health, Safety, and Sanitation of the codified ordinances of the city of Worcester, Ohio, and declaring an emergency.
Mr. Sanders, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. President. What we have before us this evening with this order is to create prohibited hours in the Liberty and Market Street quad and the Liberty Street North and South Pedestrian Alley. The unfortunate point of this is this has come before us because we had a number of complaints, not only from business people who realize they only are there till maybe 10, 11 o'clock at night, but more importantly, all the residents, a number of residents that are that have bought property on the lots on both, in and while I know I'm not excited about limiting hours, I also fully understand the position of the property owner. And at this point, and having seen some videos that were taken of some of the situation of what's happened down there, thus the reason why we have in front of us. I actually would like to move to third and final reading, but I'll be completely candid. I would like to have a conversation from council to see what the kind of get a feel for where we are with this, because I really don't want to waste time. Open. So I would request we open the floor for discussion.
Craig, thank you. I'll step in. I've gotten overwhelming support for this from the downtown business community. And while I think I have had one negative response, I think it was someone who maybe doesn't understand the gravity of the issue. I find it as reasonable since it only applies to the quadrants, and someone can still walk on the sidewalk. So I want to make that clear. If someone must walk on the sidewalk at those hours, I wouldn't want to be out necessarily unless I absolutely had to be between the hours of 11 p.m. and 5 a.m. But that is still permissible, as I understand it, with this piece of legislation. So I have had downtown business merchants tell me that they want to see this passed right away. If council were to deliberate and lose the next 6 weeks or so, it would be a critical loss for the business owners down there. So like I said, I think we've seen overwhelming response. All of council has received letters. We even saw some letters come in just this evening right before the council meeting. So I feel an obligation to proceed forward, and I would second a motion to take it to third and final reading. That's where I stand. Thank you.
Mr. Sanders, this is Scott Myers.
Yes, sir.
I agree with David Silvestri. I think we should move this forward. I too have been getting positive comments, and would like to also note that poor Shannon Walker has been on this meeting all night, and thank you for we should give her a chance to say something since she's been very patiently waiting. But I would support moving this to passage this evening as well, noting some of the comments from people that I've heard from regarding disadvantaged and homeless. I think Mayor outlined a number of things we currently do to try to support that. I think there needs to be more done, and I think we will continue to try to find solutions to a very complicated issue. But I think this is a separate issue, and I think this needs to be passed in support of our downtown.
Johnny, and so I reiterate Councilman Silvestri and Councilman Myers' comments and feedback. This is a needed initiative. It's a first step to better control the after-hour usage of our quadrants adjacent to the square. And we can make this happen quickly and not delay this until, our next session in council. Hopefully we can get this approved this evening.
This is Jen Warden. I would just like to say that I think it needs to be made clear that for those who are watching, many of the complaints that have been made are about individuals on there who aren't considered part of our homeless population. Regardless of their economic situation, we have a certain level of decency to which all members of our community are held. And specifically when your behavior makes other people feel uncomfortable, or when you should direct crude and vulgar threats to passersby, business owners, and residents who want to just exercise their right to enjoy our downtown. We know we have a problem that needs to be addressed. I realize there's a thin line, absolutely here, that we're trying to stay on the just side of that line. I think this curfew will give us a temporary solution. There's obviously more work to be done, and we want to make sure that Worcester is a welcome place for all that want to be here. So I encourage our police officers to please use the option of citations as a last resort, particularly for people who are blatantly disregarding the law and being disrespectful of others. But I think this is the tip of the iceberg. This is a start. This is a way to get the conversation going, but it's probably not going to fix the problem.
Craig, this is Bill Bastanza. I just have a question. Probably this is for Mrs. Scavelli. I think we had talked about this earlier, but I'm not sure we came to a conclusion. The parking lots down there are, I would think that some of them would be used from customers from some of the businesses on South Market after 11 o'clock. How would that play out if somebody was parking there?
The legislation for that. If you go to, find it here.
Are you picking something up there, Mr. Scavelli?
I'm just looking through here to find the section that I was looking for. So I think what we're looking for is that it specifically says no one who's unauthorized. And so if you were parking there as part of what you were doing as a business, you would be authorized at that point. So you would not fall under the.
Did you find that? I didn't see that, but.
Yeah, no unauthorized person shall remain on or any portion of the area known as Liberty Street or Market Street quadrants.
Okay, so an authorized person would be a customer using one of the businesses downtown now.
Correct.
Okay.
All right, well, if there's no other comments or questions, yes, I would motion to suspend the rules of council and place ordinance 2020-28 on third and final reading.
All right. Motion to suspend the rules by Mr. Sanders and seconded by, was it Mr. Myers?
Scott Myers seconded.
Yeah, second by Mr. Myers. So would you please call the roll on the suspension of the rules, Mr. Paul?
Sanders,
Yes.
Silvestri,
Yes.
Warden,
Yes.
Ansel,
Yes.
Bostancic,
Yes.
Cavan,
Yes.
and Myers.
Yes.
And the rules are suspended, and I look to you again there, Mr. Sanders.
Motion to adopt.
Motion to adopt by Mr. Sanders. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Silvestri. I'm gonna weigh in real quick. As an attorney, sometimes I, worry about, where are we with regard to individual rights. I think a lot of people aren't aware of the circumstances that those second floors and third floors down there have people living, and that's in essence their houses. And I'm not sure how many of us would stand for what goes on sometimes into the wee hours of the morning if they were standing on the sidewalk outside of our house in our neighborhood. So, you know, this isn't just the business owners saying, oh, we've got to do something. These poor individuals who are living there cannot have the quiet enjoyment of their residences. And I see this as to not only help the businesses, but really protect the interest of the homeowners and residences who have decided to make downtown their place to live. Because as I said, no one sitting here would put up with this on the sidewalk outside their house.
That was the point I wanted to make, President Bytendike.
Sorry, I stole your thunder, but
No problem.
but you know, great minds think alike there, Mr. Cavan.
But that was the point I wanted to make too. Not, I mean, a lot of there's a few businesses that are still open after 11, but by and large, it's the residents downtown that are really feeling some of the negativity that's going on. And I also wanted to thank Mr. Silvestri for pointing out the lines where what we're talking about. We're talking about the square and the alleys. We're not talking about walking down the sidewalk. We're talking about specific areas where there's been that type of activity.
If I could just acknowledge that we have Ms. Carolyn Robinson here this evening on this call. Would you like to say anything?
Oh, thank you very much. Everyone has said it very well already, and I'm speaking as a downtown resident, and I'm desperately seeking sleep, but in a fair and equitable way that respects those of us who wish to do so in the overnight hours. And I've enjoyed living in downtown Worcester at the Public Square for 3 years now, but in recent weeks, I've had to leave my home on several occasions just so that I can sleep overnight because of the continual overnight occupation of the square. And Chief Fisher can attest to this. I've called 911, and not just me, but others, at least a dozen times in June, because I've witnessed and also video recorded multiple incidents of open drug use, loud fights, constant yelling, overnight gatherings using portable speakers, blasting loud music, and abusive threats to residents and passersby. It's about a dozen people, you know, as President Bikendike said, if you had this outside your door, you would know in a second. I have it every night. And the police are currently limited in their effectiveness because the square is designated as a public area. It gives them the authority to require people to leave during the hours when most of us need to sleep. So I really appreciate all of your comments, and we all realize there's more creative and compassionate efforts that are needed during the daylight hours. That's a separate issue, but I thank you for considering this legislation deeply for those of us that live in the area. Thank you.
I will just bring up, President Biden, that we do, and these some of the same individuals who mentioned it before, but we do have several individuals in the comments who are vehemently against this legislation. And they would like it to be not passed this evening so that there could be public comment.
I don't control the legislation. I just run the meeting. Mr. Ansel moved and to have the rules suspended, and they were seconded and voted on. So I'm going to follow the rule of order in terms that this is what council has decided, and we will eventually move to a formal vote. And I might also add that, you know, being a citizen doesn't mean that you aren't, you know, you don't have some sort of social responsibility. And just because these people do not want to abide by the rules of living in a community doesn't mean that there can't be things done to enforce the social compact that exists when you decide to live in a in a city. And unfortunately, this society has gotten to the point where civility is in short supply, and downright mean-spiritedness and threats and intimidation rule, because they don't think that the rules of society apply to them. And sometimes municipalities have to take action in order to preserve the rights of those whose quiet enjoyment and other rights are being trampled on. So, I see this as weighing, who has the better argument. And I don't think someone raising cane, swearing, making threats at 3 a.m. has has a leg to stand on when they're interfering with safety of others and the right of other people to enjoy a good night's sleep.
If I might weigh in really quickly, this is Shannon Waller with Main Street Worcester, and I appreciate the council's sense of urgency in this matter because it is substantially interfering with the quiet enjoyment of the people who live downtown. And we've really been promoting the mixed use of our downtown because that's the most viable way for a healthy economy, a healthy way of life. And this particular legislation is not a whim. This is something that was well thought out by the city administration after considering a lot of different options. Nobody is discussing this because we want to. We feel backed into a corner. We're trying to figure out ways to alleviate some of the friction point that is sort of centered on the pavilion right now. And this is one measured way that's very limited that we will think will have a substantial impact on the quality of life for people who live downtown. So I appreciate your consideration on this.
Well, I don't see anything else. I would ask Mr. Paulo to please call the roll on the motion to adopt.
Okay. Sanders,
Yes.
Silvestri,
Yes.
Warden,
Yes.
Ansel,
Yes.
Bostancic,
Yes.
Cavan,
Yes.
and Myers.
Absolutely, yes.
Okay, ordinance number 2020-28 passes. This brings us to the miscellaneous portion. I'm going to start with Mr. Myers because it looks like afterwards he's going to be flying into the danger zone. So we'll start with you.
That is the USS Intrepid that is in permanent harbor as a museum in New York City. So if you ever get a chance, it's a wonderful, wonderful thing to go see. Yeah, I just wanted to express my my sadness over the loss of dear friend Brett Duffenbaugh this past week. It was a very, very much of a shock, and my prayers go out to him, his family through this time.
Well said. Mr. Bostancic.
Just a quick question to Mrs. Scavelli. How soon will the ordinance we passed for the limited hours downtown go into effect? What's the earliest possible?
Well, it passed with an emergency, so they would take effect, could essentially take effect immediately. I would say that we would probably, I'd have to discuss that with the administration and with probably the police department, but we would need to most likely post signs,
Yeah.
a little bit of notice to people before we would start doing anything to enforce that. And I think we'd probably, I would suggest that there be maybe a 2-week period of time where, warnings are given before any kind of citations are issued before we took too much action on that. That would be my suggestion, but we'll talk that over with the police and with the rest of the administration.
Thank you. I have nothing further.
Mr. Silvestri.
Yes, my thoughts and prayers are with the Duffenbaugh family during this time. It came as a real shock, and it's a real loss to our community. A real leader in our community that I think a lot of people looked up to, and I appreciate his contributions. So again, my prayers are with the family, and that's all I have for this evening. Thanks.
Ms. Warden.
I have nothing to add. Thank you.
Mr. Ansel,
Nothing more this evening, Mr. President.
Mr. Cavan,
Nothing to add. Thank you.
and Mr. Sanders, who you seem to carry most of the mail tonight. I'll give you the last word.
I have nothing to add, Mr. President.
All right, did I miss anyone? I think I got everyone. All right, motion to
Adopt.
adjourn by Mr. Ansel. Is there a
Good
second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Myers. And we're
Seconded by everybody.
all in favor, say aye. We're adjourned.
Aye.
Aye.
Good evening, everyone.
Thanks.
Sleep
Good night.
tight.
Hey,
Have a good night.
Mr. Paulo,
Yeah.
are you gonna come down with the legislation, or do you want me
Yeah.
to come?
Well, I'll give you a call or something in the morning and we'll just.
Yeah, because I want them to take a look at my